All right, so I am going to be doing yet another front-end mentor challenge. Hope you guys are having a good day. This one is an age calculator app. It is a junior practice problem, and this is what we are going to try to build. So it's basically like a 3 input fields, a day, month, year. The user types in some information, and then you need to tell them how many years and months and days have passed since that date. And I will say I'll probably use ChatGPT to figure out the hard parts of this for converting dates. So this little hint, working with dates, I would probably do it yourself or try to figure out how to do it yourself, but I'm lazy and I'm gonna use ChatGPT. So let's just go ahead and go to our project here. And let's just get started. So the first thing we're gonna try to do is I'm gonna open up the zip file that they give you when you start this challenge. And they do give you, I believe, a desktop design. There's like error states, invalid states, all this stuff. Like doing something as simple as this, it looks like it would take like, 20 minutes. But with all these different states, it really just adds on more and more time. So I'm going to do like the most basic, which is just like type in some information and convert them. Okay, so let's try to build this. So we need a panel that has some rounded border radius, a white panel with like a gray background. And let's see if we can at least do that. So I'm going to make a div here. And inside the div, I'll give a class name of BG white. And I'll say rounded. And I'll say extra large. And let's just go ahead and see if we get anything. We don't, because we have to add some content here. Okay, so let's just add some content, and here's our panel. So now we need 3 inputs. We need a date, month, and a year to kind of be proper. Like typically we wrap stuff in forms. So I will add a form here in React, and we're going to add those inputs. I'll just add 3 inputs, and I'll say this is going to be name of date or day. This will be name of month, and then this will be name of year. And then obviously you want to add a label to all these. So I'm going to say day. Go ahead and do this. And then we'll say month. And then down here, we'll say year. All right, let's check this out. So we got some inputs. We got some text here. We're making some progress. Looks pretty good. So also, you want to say HTML4, and you want to go ahead and just put day here. So the way this works is you want to kind of link the label with the input. So if I were to give this an ID of day, now when I were to click on the label, it'll select the input, or it'll focus is the correct word, the input. So let's do the same thing. I'll copy this. I'll go ahead and just, command click, paste that in. I'll say month, and I'll say year. And then again, with the IDs, we got to do this as well. So let's just add in that, say month, and then we'll say year. Awesome. So now what we want to do is let's style this a little bit. There's some placeholder text, so DD, MM, and YYYY. So let's just go ahead and add placeholder here. Say DD. Go ahead and copy that and paste it in twice. And I'll say month, month, and then this will be YYYY. That makes sense? Now we got some placeholder text. Looks pretty good. Now, this is using a custom font. So let's kind of pull in that font. I do believe there is a font here like this. And I can just go ahead and copy this fonts directory and kind of put it right inside of this fonts one. I do have an existing font, so let me just delete this one. And I'll paste that in. Now to get the fonts to work, the easiest way to do it is you add a font face in the global CSS. And you need to add the font family that you want to add in. So in our case, this is Poppins. So I'll say Poppins. And we want to target Poppins regular. Let's just do regular for right now. And that's a TTF. Okay. So this will load in your font face for Poppins. And I do believe there's different ways like loading the bold and extra bold and stuff like that. But we'll stick with regular, and let's just see if this actually works. So now that we've added that font face, let's go to the Tailwind CSS, and I have a bunch of like existing colors I should probably get rid of. Okay, let's do that. So notice here in the Tailwind config, this is where you can add custom classes, that you can add custom colors and spacing and stuff like that. In our case, we want to add a custom font family called Poppins, like that. And that should give us access to style the text in our page by just simply saying text, I think it's text Poppins, or is it font family? Hold on, font. Yeah, font Poppins. There we go. Okay, so I just added font Poppins here, And then for this parent and all of its children, we should have that applied. So there it is. We have the Poppins font, and looks pretty good. Now I do think this is all caps here. They used all caps for the labels here. So I'll say day, I'll say month, and I'll say year. Yeah, looks pretty good. Okay, so the next steps. I mean, the font's good enough. Let's just move on. They have, if you look here, it's like they're stacked in columns, right? So we have 3 columns. What I would typically do is flexbox. So let's just go ahead and on the form itself, I'll give this a class name. I'll give it a flex. Okay, this is a Tailwind class you can use to apply flexbox to the parent container. And then also, if you look at them, I mean, they're already like stacked left to right, but this gives you a little bit more flexibility if you wanted to kind of group these. So we should kind of wrap these things. I'm going to wrap them in divs. There might be a better semantic HTML way to do this, but I'm just going to use divs right now. I'll do that. Go ahead and do that. Okay. And then on those, I'm going to go ahead and just add some classes to all these, right? We want to stack these vertically so that the label comes on top of the input. So I'm going to say class name, and I'll say flex column. Save that. And now they're stacked properly. Now, one of the most important things with Tailwind in spacing is learning how to use gaps. So when you're using Flexbox, you can actually add spacing in between elements. In our case, notice that this label is like super close to the input. If you want to space this out a little bit, you could just add a gap to these. So I could just say gap of 1, and that'll space it out a little bit. If I actually save the file, it'll space it out. And then also, if you want to put space between left and right, like the day, month, year, you can add gap to the parent flex. So here, this form, if you wanted to put spacing in between all these 3 things, you just add gap, and I'll say 2, something like that. So now there's a little bit of space between these. Okay, it's not that much though, so I'm going to make it like a 4 until it looks like it's enough. So I think I did delete like this pale blue class. So I'm going to say BG, I'll say gray, and I'll say 100, just so that we can like differentiate between the background and what we're seeing here. Okay, so let's look at this. This has some padding. I would say this is like an 8 padding. So in Tailwind, what you can do is you can actually, on the white panel we have, I can say P-8, and that's going to add padding to every single side of the box. And look at that. I think we got it pretty good. Okay. So far, so good. And then there's like a horizontal line here and then a button. So let's try to add that. I think we're kind of, actually, before we do that, notice that these inputs are kind of fixed width. So one thing we could do is we could potentially, on all the inputs, we could give these some type of class. So I'm going to go ahead and do a shortcut. I'm going to do a Command D, the select placeholder, and I'll type in class name here, and I will type in the width of, let's try 44. I'll also do a control space to bring up the Tailwind IntelliSense if you have the Tailwind IntelliSense plugin installed. And that should hard code these to a specific width, I believe. Okay, I think I just need to give like a smaller width. Let's do like 12 or something so that it looks kind of closer to what we're shooting for. And 12 might be a little too small, so maybe we'll do like 16. And we'll just apply W16 to all these. Make sure that these are all like the same width. And then one thing also, if you compare the design to what we're shooting for, like this has some padding here. This might be a padding 2 on the X direction, padding 1 on the Y. So on all of these inputs, again, like you could just simply find this and say padding X is going to be 3, padding Y is 2. Let's see what this does. Okay. Looks okay. The yeah, I think it looks okay. So one thing you'll notice is that there's a border on the input, and then this text is small. So how do you achieve that? Well, on the label itself, you want to select these 3 labels, like so, and give them a class name of text extra small. I don't even think that was small enough. Yeah, I think it needs to be even smaller than that, but I am zoomed in, so maybe it looks fine. So I think that looks okay. But then also on the inputs itself, we're going to go ahead and add I think a border of 1. I think you can just type border, and then I'm going to say border gray of 400 and see how that looks. Okay. Now also, this is rounded a little bit. So let's just go ahead and also give this a rounded, and I'll give that a large rounding. Okay, so all that work for making some 3 input boxes in a form. All right, so again, let's try to go to the next step, which is like a horizontal ruling. So I think in Tailwind, you can actually apply an HR class. I have to go to the docs to remember, but I could say HR here, and I can give it a class name, and I think they're not an HR that's built in the Tailwind. I could be wrong about that. Yeah, I'm probably wrong. I'm just gonna say border, and I think I can say border bottom actually. So border B gray 400. And let's see what happens here. We do have a little faint line here, so that's good. But then we want to space this HR between the form and the content itself. So you could potentially add a margin top, so MT, and I'll do a 4. Okay. Maybe an MB4 as well. And if you wanted to simplify that, you say MY a 4, right? So just the Y direction, add some margin above, and then add some margin below. Okay. Okay, so now we want a button here. So let's get a rounded button and make it purple. And then they also have like a little thing in that button. Now, one way you could achieve this is you could wrap this in a div itself. And then I could just make a button here, give it a class name. I could say BG purple 500. And then we're going to say rounded full to make it a circle. And then I'll say width of like 32, height of 32. And I think that should make a button for us. And here we go. That button is huge. So 32 is probably not a good number. Let's half it to 16. Looks a little bit better. Now, the reason I wrap this in a div is because it gives us the ability to add a flex here. And I think we could go ahead and say like row 1 onto this one. No? What about W full? Okay, adding W full seems like it made it pretty good. I'm not sure why the button is like squashed. Kind of weird. So sometimes like maybe this isn't the best approach. Maybe what we can actually do is we can give this a relative position, and then on the button itself, we can give this a absolute positioning, and we can say from the right side of the page, we want to bring it in. Maybe that will be a better approach. And we'll say negative top 5 to bring it up. Okay, this button's still huge. Let's make it a 12. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Margin Y, I'm going to space that out a little bit. And yeah. This looks okay. I mean, what we could do on the panel to make it more realistic is we could give the panel itself a width of 24 or something. Okay, maybe not 24. Let's do like 80. How's that? Okay, we need something bigger than 80. Or 90, 96. So that's more close to the design that we're shooting for. Now we just need to put like an icon inside of this. So if we were to go to the images we're given, I'm guessing this icon arrow is what we want. So I'm gonna go ahead and plop this icon into our public folder here in Next.js. And we are gonna go find that button. And we're gonna go ahead and put that image, and we're gonna say icon arrow SVG like this. And there you have it. Now it's a little large. So I think we could just simply make it, can we just make it width and height of like something smaller? Let's try that. Yeah, that works fine. So notice that it's not like centered. Flex is going to be a really good friend here. So I could say flex, and I could say justify center, and then item center. That will take every child and kind of align them in the center. So now we have a button. Looks pretty good. All right, what is the design we're going for? Desktop design. There we go. So now we want to have 3 different things here: years, month, and days with 2 hyphens. So let's just go ahead and try to display that underneath the form here. I'm going to go ahead and just make another div. We're going to say years, months, days. And it's actually in all lowercase for some reason. So let's go back and lowercase that. Months, days. Okay. Now we want those to be in separate lines, and then also we want these like numbers to show up over here. So we probably want to wrap this in a div itself. So every single one of these will be in its own div. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and give this a class name of flex column so that they're stacked vertically. Technically, you don't need to do that because they're divs, but that'll stack them vertically. And then we could put some gap between them all to space them out. Okay, maybe 12 was too much. I'll do 4. And then we want to put some hyphens here because that's what the design has. So let's just put some hyphens. And again, this thing needs to be separated into like a flex as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say class name flex gap of 2, which means that here we could have a span for the years. Okay. And then also we'll have a span for the hyphens. So we'll do this. That makes sense? Now we got some hyphens. We can make them a different color. So like we just go ahead and say like class name is text purple of 500. And then I'm going to make these texts of extra large because I think they were pretty big. Maybe even bigger than that. Let's just do like 4XL. I do think they were bolded too. So I could say font bold. And it looks like that made them a little bit bolded. And then notice that these things are not like vertically aligned. Okay, so we can say item center to make them vertically aligned. And we're going to go ahead and do that with the other ones. So Command D, item center. There we go. And what else do we need to do? Obviously, this text here, the month, years, and days, this is huge. So I'm going to say like text of 8XL, and we'll say font of bold. And that should, okay, that's too big. That's too big. Let's go 5. Even that seems a little big. Let's do 4. Okay. So now the idea is, I think, is when you go ahead and click this button, it should submit the form. Now, one thing I forgot to do is that this button should probably live inside the form so that when you click it, it's going to default to submitting the form. But that's going to mess up what we're doing with the flex. So I'm going to go ahead and take the flex and I'm going to put it on a div here like this so that we can keep the form and the button like together. Maybe I should do that. Put it there. And the form doesn't need any class yet. Okay, so now when I click this button, it should submit the form. You'll notice that the page refreshes, which is what we want. Okay, so now is the fun part, the React part, which I'm going to take some shortcuts and use ChatGPT to basically do for us, where we're going to type in a month, day, year. So I could say like, I'll type in like a month, day, year, so 1/1/1980. And I will click submit. And what this needs to do is we need to run some JavaScript code and basically compute how many days have passed since that time. Okay, so on the form, we'll say an on submit, and we're going to go ahead and just put a callback function here. Sometimes it's okay just to put the callback right in here. Some people like to put it to the top. Figure out what you like to do and just do it. Don't listen to other people. So let's go ahead and set some state. We got to keep track of like what the user has typed in here. And technically, I don't think we need to do that. I think we get the form data here. So if I were to console log this, let's say console log form data, this is going to be an event. I think this is just event like this, and I can say e.prevent default, and then I think I can say e.target.form. To be honest, I don't remember how to get the form data. So let me go ahead and just do this in ChatGPT. How do I get the form data in a React form submit callback? Okay, it's like this. Grab this, do this, and that should be fine. Now it doesn't like the fact that this is like an event. So for right now, I'll say any. There's like a proper way you have to type that. I just always forget what it is. It doesn't like that either. I'll just keep it. Okay, so the idea is that when someone submits the form, if I type in like, go to the console down here, and I click submit, we get day, month, year. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, and again, like if you're a beginner, like just try to struggle figuring out like dates yourself. If you're more advanced, like you don't want to waste time doing this stuff. You just want to build features and functionality for users because you know that you can figure it out after a couple of 30 minutes, an hour, whatever. But what I would do is I'm going to destruct form data. So I'll say day, month, year, and I'll say equal to form data. Actually, I'm going to equal it to this. Okay, so that'll give us the day, month, year that the user has typed in. And then what we want to do is we want to basically calculate the time elapsed from today against what the user has typed in. So let's go back here. I'm going to say calculate the months, days, and years elapsed from the time typed in from the form data and inside this function. Go ahead and paste in the function. I know you guys can't see me typing that, but basically I'm taking the code that I was typing and it should hopefully kind of fill that out, right? So now we have input date is equal to this. It makes a date. It does a time diff. It does the elapse of it. And honestly, if you get good at asking ChatGPT what you want, you can become super productive. It might seem like you're just a lazy developer doing this, but if it saves you 30 minutes, then by all means, like just do it, right? So what we're going to do is hopefully this is right. Sometimes ChatGPT gives you some bad stuff, but hopefully it's right. What we're going to do is we need to put this in state. So up here in the top, I'm going to say const, and then I'm going to say elapsed and set elapsed. Elapsed. Okay, equals use state. And we're going to make this an object of days. And we'll just go ahead and say like undefined, months, undefined, years, undefined. Okay. Now I'm making this an object so that we can kind of just like quickly set all these things. So I'm just going to go down here. I'm going to set those. So days will be elapsed days. Years will be elapsed years. And months will be elapsed months. So hopefully, number is not assignable to type undefined. So we're getting some TypeScript issues. These need to actually be typed. So I could say days is a number or undefined. Months, number or undefined. And then years is a number or undefined. Okay. We're not go with TypeScript. This is just passing in a generic type definition so that like it knows when you send something wrong to this, it'll yell at you. And now what we want to do is we want to display these hyphens if you do not have that stuff set. So I'm going to go ahead and say if elapsed dot, look at that beautiful IntelliSense, and then I will just go and say years. If this is set, I'll do a ternary, and I will just say elapsed years. Otherwise, we will print out that. Okay. Hopefully this works. We'll test out my theory in a second, but we're going to go ahead and do the same thing down here. Why is it not pasting? Okay, let's just do this. Paste that, save it. This will be months. And this will be days. Okay, so now let's try this out. I'm going to say 1/1/1980. Click submit. There we go. So hopefully that's correct. Try that. 2000. There we have it. So I'm not going to do any more on this challenge. If you were to actually do the challenge, you got to worry about error handling. So if someone were to potentially not fill in this information correctly, you have to validate the form and show error messages. If someone were to want to be on mobile, you got to do the mobile design. So again, I'm not going to sit here for 3 hours like actually solving the entire challenge. I would recommend that you go through and like try to challenge yourself with this. The key takeaways of this video is if you're trying to learn Tailwind, most of the things I've used in this video are things you're going to use all the time in Tailwind CSS, like flexbox, flex with a column direction, centering items, justifying centering with height. Like we touched on a lot of the utility functions that you're going to use in Tailwind. So hopefully you learned something new from watching this. And in terms of React, we learned how to basically listen for a form submission, run some logic, update some state, and then React is going to re-render those elapsed days. Down here, in my final takeaway, again, you might say that, oh, my use of ChatGPT was cheating. But again, if you're a beginner, like you can go and try to go to Stack Overflow and understand how this all works. This is something I've done multiple times in the past throughout my career, and I just don't want to waste time trying to figure this out by hand anymore. So I would recommend that you do that as well. If you are more experienced, like don't waste time trying to figure this out, or find a utility library. Like NPM probably has a bunch of libraries that'll do that for you. Pull it in and just do that. But at the end of the day, your client doesn't care how you solve it. They just care that it looks and is working the way that they expect it to, right? So there's no shame in like getting answers from Stack Overflow. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, press the bell icon. And like always, I have a Discord channel that you're welcome to join if you want to find a place to just get help or ask questions, or if you just want to talk to me directly. Sometimes I join there and I'm kind of active. Depends on how I'm feeling. So other than that, have a good day and happy coding.